Just watching that Cardiff game back again, did Connacht go off script in that game? There was a lot of stuff that didn't look the same as the way you had been playing. There was a lot of maybe indecision. There was a lot of players not linking up with each other. So you had a lot of players getting isolated. It just looked off key. It was like the timing was wrong.
I think it's a fair observation to say it was a bit clunky, probably a bit stodgy as a performance, maybe a little bit one-paced. And I think there's a couple of things with that. We've referenced the weather before in terms of just that difficulty of handling the ball and probably having confidence on the ball. And that's not an excuse, because I think the way we play the game, we've proven in the past, even when the weather's miserable, with the way we set up with our shapes and the work we do on our skills, we should still be able to play our game in those conditions. So I don't think it's an excuse, but I do think you saw players that are a little more hesitant on the ball, and on the back of that, we probably lacked a bit of conviction, either with some of our carries or some of our passes. And as a result of that, you don't get the conviction, you don't get the punch, and if you don't get the punch, it's very hard to be playing off fast ball. So I think both teams ended up with fast ball around about 30-something%, which is about half of what you might expect in other games. So I think that was a factor. I think as well for us, we probably didn't have the movement off the ball in attack that gives us multiple options for the ball carrier, or multiple options for the 10s to change direction, or for other players to overcall, and just give ourselves opportunity to hurt Cardiff in different channels of the field. And I think part of that was maybe a little bit of rustiness coming off the break, but a lot of it was, we talked a lot about the kicking game. We talked a lot about efficiency of getting out of our own half. This is in the build-up to the game. We talked about not wanting to hand Cardiff any freebies in terms of loose turnovers or poor exits. And then when we saw the weather conditions on the night, we doubled down on that message. And I think as a result of that, sometimes you get players that don't do the work off the ball because they're not expecting the run opportunity. You almost probably over-talk the fact that you want to be nice and clean. And sometimes when you do that as a coach with your messaging, you don't get the flow to really cause a team problem. So we learned from that. I have seen that before, but I think that definitely affected us on the night as well.
Just talking about that rustiness, Munster and Leinster both played games this weekend. Did Connacht consider doing that just to keep playing rather than to go back into training mode again?
No, not this weekend. I think the value for us probably would have been leading into that Cardiff game, perhaps. I think just having that 1 week, it enabled us to train with real high intensities across the week, and I suppose get that balance of working on a few things, freshening up, but also getting some fitness into the lads. So not so much for this weekend, but definitely moving forwards. You come off a long block of games, and you have that break where players are genuinely out of the building for a week. I think as you rebuild, then there might be value in looking at it in the future. So I think where we are now, we're back up and running again. So I'd be confident that wouldn't be an issue against Scarlets.
Firstly, any injury updates? How's the squad looking? Anybody back or anybody out after Cardiff?
Look, no concerns in terms of anyone being out from Cardiff apart from Shane Bolton. So he obviously had that concussion early in the game, and he'll do the full 12-day protocol around that. But he also injured his ankle in the same incident. I think as he went to ground on the back of that impact to the head, he's done some damage to his ankle. So he'll need to rehab that. He could be 4 to 6 weeks in terms of an expected return date. I'm just waiting for definite details on that. Everyone else came through okay from that game. We've got Byron Ralston back available after his suspension. Cullum Riley is now back training fully with us. It might be a week too soon for him to be in the mix against Scarlets, but perhaps could play some club rugby this weekend. Shane Jennings is back training with us in a similar bracket to Cullum in terms of availability. John Porch is still rehabbing his knee injury, and the others, there's no change.
That's what. Speaking of that incident with Shane, was that probably one of the more disappointing things, in the sense that going up against the team, and again when they went down to 13, it's almost like, looking from the outside, it looked like we sort of almost not panicked, but sort of tried to force things and sort of moved away from patterns. was that something that you'll address, that other teams will go down loose players, and you need to stick with the system rather than sort of what happened against Cardiff?
Yeah, I definitely think we should have taken more opportunities, and I think any time you're up against 14 players, and certainly when you're up against 13, there should be extra space for you to exploit. Now, depending on how the opposition try to combat that, the space might be on the edges, the space might be around the breakdown, the space might be in the backfield, depending on where they sort of load their resources. So, in that sense, I'm disappointed, and we have been looking at that in terms of how we could have exploited the numbers better. We didn't do that well. At the same time, as well, probably my earlier point to William, when you've not got that flow of bodies and probably not got those options off the ball, you don't set yourself up to have a framework to get the ball to that space. Now, if it's clear and obvious space in the backfield, of course, you can pull the trigger and turn the opposition and try and exploit it that way. But if there's space in the width and you just haven't got that fast ball and that flow of attack to get the ball there, then even though they've got less numbers, you're not set up to go there. So it's not so much necessarily the decision making of not going there. It's the fact that we can sometimes see it, but you just don't have the resources to do it. So we've worked hard on that, and so that's not just when teams are down on reduced numbers. That's how we need to play anyway, even when we're against 15 men. So we've done a lot of review of that, a lot of work on that over the last week, and I would expect improvement when we play that Scarlets team this weekend.
And looking at the Scarlets, they're probably in one of their lowest ebbs as they've been over the last few years. They didn't look particularly impressive, especially in that second half against Munster. But in many ways, does that make them even slightly more dangerous, as they're coming in with such a low level of expectation themselves that they've got nothing really to lose? And whatever about within the camp, outside the camp, people will be looking at this as not a gimme, but certainly 4 points Connacht should be getting.
Yeah, I think Scarlets, obviously they'll have some frustrations out of their season so far. I think the position they find themselves in, it probably makes their dangerous aspects, their threatening aspects of their play even more threatening for us. And that's not me trying to talk them up. I think if you look at them this season and probably last season as well, but particularly previewing them for this game, they've got a really dangerous offloading game, particularly a couple of forwards there in Fafita and Lousy. But you look at Johnny McNichol in the wide channels and some of the other players, the young centre pairing they've got players that really like to offload and can win that first up contact and get the ball away from contact. That's incredibly dangerous. Plus, they've still got that classic Scarlets spirit of wanting to fire shots on transition if they win a turnover or get a ball in the backfield from a loose kick or a poor kick chase. They're very dangerous on the transition. So I think when you get a team that's maybe been struggling a bit, some of those aspects of their play become even more dangerous because, as you said, if a team feels like it's got nothing to lose, then why not pull the trigger? And certainly for us in the build-up, it's about trying to do what we want to do really well. But it's also being aware that any looseness from us in terms of poor kick chase, in terms of turnovers in attack, or any poor contacts at the front end that allow someone to get head and shoulders free and throw an offload, they're the sort of moments that can result in a 60-metre try or a 70-metre try conceded. And that gives a team that might be in a bit of a low ebb, it gives them an enormous amount of belief. And, frustration grows in your camp, frustration might grow in the crowd, and it becomes a real problem. So, I think there's a lot there that we have to control really, really well. And if we do that, then, you have a chance to, I suppose, keep those threats at arm's length. But, there's enough there to be concerned about and enough there where we'll need a really good and consistent performance across the 80 minutes if we're going to do the job.
Just a very quick one. When you talk about frustration, you must be a little bit frustrated after your last performance and getting the victory to then look at the table and see you've actually dropped, another place. So it's getting really, really tight in that area, isn't it?
It is. It's always funny whenever you win and you come back and look at the results and the movement of the table around you. You do get a reaction to that, and it's funny having to process that and then work out what's the right way of framing it to the squad. I think for us, you have the probably frustration with a lot of elements of our performance. You then get the real satisfaction of the win. You look at the table and realise that the majority of teams above us have also won, and as you said, it's not actually helped our ladder position. But I think stepping back from that, you realise how important that win was to keep us in touch with them, and you start to look at what fixtures are coming up, both for us, but also for those teams in the top half. And a lot of them haven't been to South Africa yet. A lot of them have to play each other. And as well as having some pretty difficult games, they'll start to take points off each other. So, you know, with that little bit of distance and reflection, you know, it's not something that will dishearten us. It's probably something that makes us realise how important those 4 points were in Cardiff. But equally, that only sets us up if we then go and do the job, you know, Scarlets, Lions and some of the other games to come.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lindley.